Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome to all of our members, guests, and speakers. Thank you all for attending in person and online. My name is Mary Catherine, and I'm honored to serve as a meeting planning committee member for the League of Women Voters Salt Lake League. And tonight we have a really exciting panel of experts on the topic of pedestrian safety and active transportation. So I'll go ahead and move on to the land acknowledgement next. So we gather here on sacred ground, loved, cared for, protected, and cherished over the ages, and to this day by the Ute, Goshute, Paiute, and Shoshone peoples. We commit to follow their lead. For 100 years, the League of Women Voters has been a nonpartisan activist grassroots organization that believes voters should play a critical role in democracy. We encourage informed and active participation in government, work to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and influence public policy through education and advocacy. Simply put, our mission is to empower voters to defend democracy. And we would like to acknowledge new individuals who have joined the League during April. If you're present here tonight, please stand, or if you are online, put a note in the chat. Do we have any? No, that's okay. Welcome to all of everybody who's already established. A recording of tonight's event will be made available to the public on the League of Women Voters of Salt Lake website, lwvsl.org, and on our social media. Other recordings of this event, whether they be in person or of a computer screen, may not be used without the express written approval of the League. The League will only allow audio-video of this event to be broadcast in its entirety, except by the media reporting on the event. And then we'll have important League announcements and our after the end of the presentation and after the end of our meeting. So I'll go ahead and introduce our speakers for today. So first we have Stephanie Sotkin. She is a GIS and data analyst with the Salt Lake City Transportation Division. Stephanie, do you prefer to go by Steffi? Either works. Okay, so Stephanie is a GIS professional with over a decade of experience in a variety of fields. She has spent the past 6 years with the Salt Lake City core transportation division, where her work focuses on, among other things, crash data and safety. Very interesting. Steffi helps support transportation project managers and staff with crash data analysis and location visualization. When not at work, you can find Steffi enjoying the great outdoor skiing, biking, and paragliding. So fun. Or chasing after her 4-year-old on a bike. Next, we have Brett McIff. He is the active transportation subject matter expert with the Utah Department of Health and Human Services. Dr. McIff has worked in the physical activity field for over 25 years, from training individuals for peak performance to implementing population health interventions to improve the health of communities. Brett is currently the State Physical Activity and Nutrition Grant Coordinator for the Utah Department of Health and Human Services, where he has worked for the last 20 years to change the conversation from personal behavior change to environmental supports that make movement easier for everyone, regardless of ability. Very important. He completed his undergraduate work at the University of Utah in exercise and sports science and his MSPH and PhD at Walden University in public health with a community health emphasis. He is certified as a physical activity and public health specialist with the American College of Sports Medicine. So two very awesome speakers, two very established speakers, very excited to go into that. And like I mentioned before, today's topic is on pedestrian safety and active transportation. This is a topic where if you're not actively thinking about it, if you don't actively engage in it, you don't always recognize all the little things that can be done to improve that experience and to make it easier and safer for you to participate in those activities. So before we go into their presentations, I just wanted to, you're not going to have to answer these out loud. You're not going to have to do anything. But this is just a moment of reflection to think about how you interact with your environment in your daily life. So I have 3 questions. The first one is, do you know where the closest UTA tracks or bus station is to your home? And if you do, is it within a comfortable walking or wheeling distance? Okay. 2, think about the areas where you walk or wheel the most. This could be around your neighborhood, in shopping centers, your workplace, etc. What makes them feel good? What makes you feel good being there and walking around in those areas and interacting with them? What makes them feel unsettling or maybe a little more unsafe? And then lastly, what things do you consider when choosing to drive from place to place that's within a few blocks instead of walking or wheeling? That's one that I fall victim to a lot more than I should. Definitely choose to drive a lot more than I should. Okay, perfect. Now that we've all reflected and thought about this in our daily lives, we'll go ahead with our speaker presentation. So Stephanie, would you like to go first?
Yeah, take it. Am I close enough? Am I good? Awesome, thanks. Well, thank you so much. I'm honored to be here. I'm excited. This is a topic that I don't just think about professionally, but personally as well. And I'll give a second part to my bio, and it's sort of my transportation, how I got here. So I grew up in rural Vermont, a very small town where you needed a car to get almost anywhere. We had a little grocery store, but a full grocery store, you needed 20 minutes away. So a car was one type of freedom, but we were townies. So before the car, we could walk to our school, and it was awesome. There was a little group. We had like 4 families, and one's second grade. The second graders could take all the little kids. And so I sort of think about that as my first foray into transportation freedom, is being able to walk to school, and just how awesome it was. I didn't need my parents. I could do it by myself. But fast forward, I bounced around a little bit. I've lived in Boulder, Colorado. And if anyone has been there, it's a very friendly place for active transportation. So at the time I was able to be car free. My boyfriend at the time had a car, so I didn't never use a car, but I had a bike, and it got me to my job. It got me to grocery stores. It was amazing. And then we moved here about a decade ago. I still didn't have a car. And I think it took me about 2 months where you're just like, I need a car to get around. I had a UTA pass, and I had my bike, but it was, as much as I wanted to make it work, it was not working without a car. And so I bought a car, and it opened up the world of the Front Range and beyond. But in my mind, I was like, man, working in transportation has got to be a really tough job here. Everything is spread out. The roads are really wide. Like, I would never want to have to be a transportation planner in Salt Lake City or the Wasatch Front. Fast forward to three years later, and I find myself working for the Salt Lake City Transportation Division as a planner, analyst, depending on if you ask HR or my boss what my job title is. And I love it professionally, but it's also very selfish because I want to improve the built environment around me. I want better commutes. I have a 4-year-old. I want a safer neighborhood for her to be around. And so it's a job that I'm passionate about, and I think about it a lot at the office and every day when I go out that door. It's something that, I think a lot of people don't think of themselves as transportation experts, but we all are. We all transport ourselves, and you might not be thinking technically about why is this lane so wide, or what about that curb, or that's not up to ADA compliance. But you are thinking about what is the safest way to get me from point A to point B? How do I feel comfortable? Why don't I feel comfortable? Why do I drive more than I think maybe I should? And so I think that we all inherently have a little bit more transportation planner in us than maybe we think we do, because we're also experts of our own transportation journeys. You know what your commute is like to go to your work. You know what it's like to go to the grocery store, your friends, to church. You've got your best routes. It's 3:00. I'm going this way. I'm not going that way. Or like today, this morning or this afternoon, we had my kid had swim lessons at Fairmont. And I don't know if anyone's been around 21st South. That's us. I'm sorry. We're doing that. But we have an e-bike. It's amazing. But I took the kid on the e-bike because I knew that it was going to be a mess trying to cross 21st and 7th East. And so you are the expert of your commute and your route. And so I want everyone to think about that today, that you are all transportation planners and experts. And I also want to have people think about, for people in the room or wherever you happen to be, think about how you got to where you are, whether you drove, whether you were on a bike, on a bus. But what was your very last connection? I'm betting for most people was via foot or wheel. And so pedestrian traffic is part of almost every journey. Even if you take your car, No one's car is in this room. We all had to get out of our car. And so there are a lot of pedestrian spaces that we don't think about as spaces for pedestrians, giant parking lots. How far do you walk in the Costco parking lots? Has anyone done the tracker there? I was going to measure it before I came, but I didn't. If you're in the far corner. And so we all walk, I think, a lot more than we also give ourselves credit for. And there are a lot of places where pedestrians are that are not necessarily built for pedestrians, but pedestrians spend a lot of time in. So I think just some things to think about. But I'm a data person, a GIS person, which is basically geographic data. So data that you can tie to a point on the ground. And what my work for the division mainly focuses on is crash data. And so we're looking at it, and I'm calling them crashes because they're not accidents. So there's a little bit of vernacular that accident is, it's sort of, you're taking yourself out of it. Oops, it's an accident. It didn't mean to happen, but most accidents are preventable. They're not accidents. There was a mistake that was made, or usually a cascade. And so that's where the Trib and KSL and news articles are getting better, but they are crashes. They're not accidents. This is not a divine intervention for the most part that I know of. I haven't looked at all of them. And so what that looks like is we get all of our crash data from the police. So anytime the police are called, they submit, we can go into forms. There are different forms. I read those forms and then I collate them into, oops, my slides. Probably not. Did I just do anything? Oh, there we go. Okay. There we go. So these are all, they're all on our transportation website. I'm happy to share that later. But so part of what we do with that data is, the first step is just tracking the crashes. How many crashes do we have? Where are they? Do they involve pedestrian, bicyclists? We also look at motorcycles, some of those vulnerable users. And so this is sort of a tracking, was 2008. Yeah, 2008 up till 2024. And you can see there's some ups, there's some downs. This is crashes that involve pedestrians. And so this would be, in general, the way that crashes are tracked. Try not to get too much into the weeds. But by crashes are assigned a severity number, 1 through 5. 5 is a fatal, a 1 is property damage only. And it's the severity of the crash is assigned to the person that receives the most harm. So in a pedestrian vehicular crash, you can imagine the party that receives the most harm. It's going to be the pedestrian. And so, or I haven't heard of any crashes where it goes other ways. So this is, these are crashes between a motor vehicle and a pedestrian, and the red are pedestrian deaths, and then the yellow orangey color are severe injuries. And so, so these are just severe injuries and fatals. And then this is, again, it's on our website. If you want to do a little more, it's a sort of a dashboard looking at pedestrian crashes. And so we're not only interested in the number, and the address, but where was the pedestrian in a crosswalk? How old was the pedestrian? Were they using the pedestrian signal? So there's a lot of detail that we look at in terms of what happened in the crash. Was the driver, did they run a red light? Was someone not paying attention? There are a lot of very bizarre things that happen on our streets. And so we try to go through and categorize those. And so, yeah, trying to synthesize and what can we do at different intersections to make them safer. And one of the reasons, I guess, sort of the why that we do it, that I wanted to bring up is, this is a big part of our work right now in the city, is you can't prioritize both safety and speed. And when you're looking at, if you're thinking about safety of all road users, everyone in, and I guess maybe back up to a definition, the city, we work in the public right of way. And so that essentially is if you think from sidewalk to sidewalk, that is the public right of way. And for the most part, transportation, we are working from curb to curb. So everything below the asphalt. So that is sort of the purview that we can work in. And so you have all sorts of users that are using everything between sidewalk, curb, road, back up to the other sidewalk. And so I think this is a really interesting slide. The exact percentages change a little bit depending on who does the analytics, but the message is the same. The slower the car goes, the less fatal a crash is going to be for a pedestrian. And that's also one of the reasons a couple years back, Salt Lake, we did a campaign it's called 20 is Plenty. And so we have lowered, fun city term, the prima facie speed limit. So the default speed limit on all streets, on local streets, is 20 miles an hour right now. And so if you're ever on a street and it's not signed and you don't know what it is, it should be 20, unless, so, not every street is 20, but if that is sort of the default for streets that are unsigned, because you can see as you go up to 30 and 40, the chances of survival go down a lot. It's interesting. There's some new research. They're still working on it too. Cars are getting bigger. I don't know if anyone's noticed that, but some of these studies were done when the hoods of cars, if you think about older cars had a happy smile face to them, and now they're aggressive and they're angry. So if you think about when a car hits you, older cars, 20-year-old cars, it might hit you if you're an adult, and the legs, you might get knocked onto the hood. But now with especially the bigger trucks and SUVs, you're getting hit right in your really, your organs, really your soft stuff. And so, and the cars are heavier. I'm not a physics person, but I do remember that momentum and mass, it's going to be the impact is going to be greater. And so, I think it's even more imperative to have slower speeds with the larger vehicles that we have. Going faster also reduces your field of vision. And so I'd like this little cone of vision about what you can see at 15 miles an hour versus 30 miles an hour. Because at 30 miles an hour, it doesn't feel fast in a car, especially again, modern cars. It feels pretty casual. In some places it feels slow, but it really reduces what you can see in your immediate surroundings. And so that's one of the big things that we've been doing at the city, again, is focused on speed limits. And it helps not just the pedestrians, any sort of car crash. If you're going slower, you want to take the energy out of the system because it's going to help reduce the severity of the crash. And so jump through some slides of things that we can do in the roadway to help with the reduction in speed. Some non-physical changes to the road are, we've got some speed trailers. I'm sure a lot of you have seen these. And so 2 different ways to reflect, one is the speed trailer and one's a driver feedback sign, but basically they reflect to the driver how fast they're going. So I just anecdotally, they don't have no success, but not everyone slows down just because you're telling them they're going too fast. Paint, that top middle picture we installed those maybe 5 years ago, just some gray paint crossings at schools to try to give the cross a little more visibility. And then just trying to put some physical signs in the road. These ones are nice because they're usually not that hard to put out and they're not that expensive. We're moving up to things a little more expensive. Again, if you're in Salt Lake, I'm sure you've seen some more of these things pop up. Technical name speed control they're vertical devices. So things that are coming up at you. There's a lot of technical differences between lumps, bumps, humps, and tables, but essentially it's a bump that you drive over. It makes you go slower, you hope. And so the one on the upper, I guess my right, your left, has cutouts for emergency vehicles. We get people ask us questions about what those are for. And so they're to help emergency vehicles not have to slow down as much, but most personal car vehicles. You can drop into one of the tracks, but you don't fit in both. And then the raised crosswalks help both in slowing the driver down and then making the pedestrian more visible because you're up a little bit higher. And so we sort of have two different flavors of those. And then, oops, I think it vertical was horizontal. So pinching in, making the road feel narrower. You're going to drive slower, it feels narrower. So that's, we've got a program now, we're looking at adding more traffic circles as well. And then you got sort of a splitter island or a median that just narrows that lane width coming in and out of, especially residential roads. And bulb outs, curb extensions. That picture with the car, it's a big, wide turn, so you have to take it a little bit slower. And then it also gives the pedestrians a little more, and bicyclists a little more visibility. And then just some other sort of crossing options where, let's see, sorry. My left and my right is really hard this way. You guys are all opposite me, so I'm having to like cross my left and my right. So another example of a bulb out in the top corner, where the bulb out both makes the road narrower and then the crossing is shorter for pedestrians. So pedestrians that are crossing, that means that you're just exposed for a shorter amount of time. And then if a car is stopped for you, they're also stopped less, because that unfortunately, there are people get impatient, drivers. I mean, we're all a driver, I'm a driver, but don't like to wait and to stop, especially at a crossing that doesn't have a light. You know, you're just driving on a residential road and someone's stopped and you're like, why are you stopped? But a lot of times they're stopped for a pedestrian. And so if cars don't have to stop as long, it works out better for everyone. And then street trees are great on the bottom. And so we have a lot of great median islands. So trees provide multiple benefits along with traffic calming. And then pedestrian crossing. So I guess we should talk about the most pedestrian crashes happen in some sort of crossing, trying to cross the street. And so how do we make those crossings safer? We have a couple different ways to do that. There aren't as many pictures because signal cabinets aren't great unless you really like looking at, I don't know if anyone's an IT person here looking at cabinets and boxes. I don't want to judge. I'm sure someone finds them interesting, but the first one on this leading pedestrian interval. So this is something new that we've started installing around the city. And this goes back to my why you should push the button. So what this is basically, I don't know if anyone's experienced this walking around. I know I live right over here and we've done it on the intersection 17th South and 3rd East. So when you push the pedestrian button, essentially when the pedestrian phase comes up, all the traffic stops. So essentially the pedestrian gets the crossing signal before the cars get to go. So that gives you a little bit more head start. It gives the pedestrian a little bit more time to get across, and it makes them more visible. Because I don't know how many people have done the dance with a car that's turning and you're like, are you going? Am I going to go? Do you see me? And so this just gives the pedestrian a little more of the right of way. And so we're trying to install those on more intersections. Unfortunately, we have some signals that are too old for the technology to implement these, but we're adding them where we can. Hawk signals and RFBs are two ways to signalize an intersection that it doesn't have like a traditional red light for cars. So they're those push buttons that you see. So this is an RFB. So a hawk is the big overhead one where the cars they'll get a red light when you push it. And the RFB are the rapid rectangular flashing beacon is what that stands for. But that's what this one, you'll see these more often. One of the other big challenges can be lighting. Pedestrians, we think that everyone thinks that they can be seen a lot more easily than they can be. And so like a crossing, like an RFB crossing, I don't have a video, but there's some good ones where you can hit the button and the driver, if they don't see a pedestrian, they're just not going to stop. And the pedestrian thinks that the car sees them. So that can be really dangerous. So one thing, we've got one on, I think on Capistrano, where when you hit the RFB, it actually lights up the intersection. And so the driver can see the pedestrian a lot better, but lighting is definitely an issue. So I just PSA, if you are walking around anytime near dusk, just assume that you cannot be seen. And they've done, I guess, a study recently. A lot of people, if you wear reflective stuff, vests are great, but drivers have a really hard time actually correctly judging the distance of sort of a static reflecting thing. So it's better to put reflectors on something that moves, like your feet or your ankles, because that movement, I don't understand the science, but it helps drivers judge the distance. So especially if you're biking at night, putting reflectors on your feet are going to be as effective or more effective than just wearing like a vest. But just assume that you are not seen, even if it's not fully dark. Pedestrians are harder to see than everyone thinks. And on the refuge island, this isn't a great picture, but it's basically a sort of an island of safety between two travel lanes that sometimes will either have another button, or you can cross one lane, check to make sure the other lane is safe, or if someone doesn't stop for you. So that's sort of some of the physical things that we can do in the street. We have some programs to help with trying to figure out where to put these things, how we're going to tackle a lot of the stuff. The first one is called our Livable Streets program. I don't know if everyone's heard of that. So basically the program is we've taken the city, we've divided it up, and I think it's like 113 zones, and we're sort of going zone by zone, neighborhood by neighborhood, and trying to do a deep dive and what that neighborhood's sort of safety issues are, and seeing what we can do, and whether it's speed reduction, just sometimes it's proper signage. Like the dead end street, I'm blanking the name, off of 9th, basically dead ends at Fairmont Park. Like that street has a lot of cars that are coming in thinking it goes through and they don't. And so how do you divert that traffic? And so going in and doing a lot of public engagement in those zones. So I don't know if anyone has lived in those, but your zone is coming. But we're in zones 5 through 9 right now, and we have 113. So we will get there. It just might take us a little while. We're doing about 5 zones a year. But there's a nice website. You can go up and you can look on your zone. There's also sort of just a general survey that you can take. The Neighborhood Byways program is sort of a more targeted and trying to create safe routes for walking pedestrians sort of through different neighborhoods and different areas. Let's see where. I'll pull up the map. We have a couple that we're working on right now. And a lot of it is choosing sort of already calmer routes that don't have a lot of traffic. And then again, some of the most dangerous parts are crossings. And so trying to improve those crossings. Kensington, that's the one I was thinking about. So if you've driven on 7th East recently at Kensington, so just north of 17th South, they're doing some construction. And what that is they're putting in a signal to help bicyclists and pedestrians cross Kensington there, because Kensington's been designated as a byway. And so it's a nice low stress street. And so now we just need to be able to get people safely across all the roads. And then the last one that I'll talk about that is a little bit bigger in scope, but is this designation called Vision Zero. And I have no idea how I'm doing on time. I get so it's a program called Vision Zero. It was started in, gonna say Sweden, but it's sort of a worldwide program, basically acknowledging that traffic deaths happen and that traffic deaths are unacceptable, and that the correct number of traffic deaths is 0. So that's where the Vision Zero comes from. And it's a program that you have to apply for. You have to have a plan. The city is currently working on its plan. And I think it's going to be really exciting when it's done, because sort of the premise of Vision Zero is you more or less admitting what we have been doing isn't working. And so we need to figure out how to do this differently. And so maybe something that we should coordinate more on, but because there's a lot more to pedestrian safety and healthy neighborhoods than just transportation professionals, as much as we like to think that we are the end all be all. There are a lot of other factors that can go into this. And so we are in the process of, the mayor has declared the intention to be part of the Vision Zero network, and we are going through the process right now of drafting our plan. And part of that will eventually be public engagement, public communication. I don't know what that looks like yet, but hopefully we will be getting the word out well enough that everyone here that wants to know about it will know about it. And then those are all the fun things that we can and we want to do. We unfortunately cannot do everything that we want to do. Cost and time are two really big issues. I don't know, again, if you've driven around here, a lot of our roads are falling apart. A lot of our roads are also very wide. So Salt Lake City, we are blessed and cursed with really wide roads. So if you talk to someone in like Boston or New England that have these very wide, windy, narrow roads, they come out here as a transportation professional and get a little jealous because we have all this real estate. That in theory, you could add bike lanes, you can add walking space, like we have the public right of way. But concrete is really expensive. And then you got to maintain it after you build it. And so it can be a challenge, moving curb line. So that's essentially what we did on the 9th South corridor. Hopefully people have been out to enjoy that trail. It's awesome now, but that project took a really long time and it was really expensive, but we got something cool out of it because we had the space to move the curb out and add a multi-use trail. But we just right now don't have the money to fix everything or the time. We're going gangbusters with construction right now, and I think everyone would be mad if we were doing more. I don't know who likes driving through construction. So, and then unfortunately, not everyone has similar views as us in terms of creating safe transportation networks for everyone. Cars are still the dominant way that people get around, and there's a very strong car culture, and people don't want us to slow their commute. They don't want us to change the way that where they can drive, where they can park. And so we spend a lot of time both we're trying to do more engagement, trying to engage people and talk about what we're doing, but we do face opposition on multiple levels. We do also work a little bit with UDOT. There's some state facilities that run through the city, and they are very good at moving cars, and that is what they like to do. And they don't always like it when we want to change how they are moving the cars. And then there's some higher level, usually transportation, we squeak through the legislative session mostly unnoticed. This year was not the case. And so we are working through SB 195, if anyone followed that. But we are under the magnifying lens of the legislator for at least another couple years. So just another layer to add to what we do. So I think I'm winding down in an okay time. Maybe I haven't taken up, but I have some homework for people. I don't know if you came here expecting homework. I won't be checking in. This is all on our system. But trying to go for a new walk somewhere, trying to think of somewhere in your life. The weather is beautiful. The flowers are out. Take your allergy medicine, go outside, find something, whether it's just walking to a friend's house or trying out one of the new trails that we have. 9th South is great. You can go to Liberty Park. You can walk to a restaurant, have lunch. It doesn't have to be far. You know, walk a couple blocks. If you're going downtown, go out to eat and then walk to another restaurant to get dessert. Just try to find somewhere new to walk that you feel safe. And then maybe you can add it to your routine. But I feel like sometimes we get stuck in patterns. I think there have been studies that, especially with transportation, it can take up to 2 years for people to change their habits, and they're hard. But I think this spring is a great time that if you can try to find one place, again, even if it's just you're going for a walk with your neighbor around the block, just getting out there and using the facilities that we have, whatever they are. And then the other one is more on the other side as a driver. I went through a training and I thought this was a really great way. We're also, most of us drive, I drive. And I try to be the driver that my pedestrian self would want me to be, and the pedestrian that my driver self would want me to be. I don't think that I do that 100% of the time. And so what I think is a really great way, and this is on your way home, or if you're at home the next time you leave your house, just narrate your movements as you're doing them. So you get in the car, I get in the car, I buckle my seatbelt, I put the car in reverse, I turn, I look behind me, I check both ways, no one's coming. So I back out, I put the car in drive, and just go through those motions and sort of think about how you drive or how you walk. I think it's good, just because you're a pedestrian doesn't mean everything that you do is right also. I jaywalked across 7th East for the first time last week, and I will probably never do it again, but I was at Trader Joe's and I wanted to go to the kid, and there was a hole. So I think we have to remember that we're not always perfect pedestrians. We're not always perfect drivers, but we can all strive to do a little bit better and be a little bit safer, no matter how we are transporting ourselves. And then I've got a few supplemental reading books. If anyone wants any reading, Right of Way is really great. It's specifically pedestrian safety. The library has it. I checked, the city has it. I checked it out. Each chapter goes through a sort of different sets of challenges for pedestrians, from infrastructure, size of cars. Yeah, it's good. I really like it. You should finish it. Paved Paradise. I don't know if there's any parking nerds here, but if you've read the Doug Stroop, the high cost of free parking, the Paved Paradise is the book you wanted it to be. This one is much more approachable. And there's a third one that I forgot to add in. I haven't personally read it yet, but I think it could be interesting. It's called Killed by a Traffic Engineer. So I'm not a traffic engineer. I'm not a PE. I work with a lot of them. They're great, but I think the underlying principle is that a lot of the principles that traffic engineers work on that have built the premises are false. And so sort of one example are some of these parking minimums. And the reason that we have all these giant lots is, so those are 3 books. Sorry, I don't have the last one. It's Killed by a Traffic Engineer. If you just want a little more information. And I think that's it. Hopefully that was an appropriate amount of time. All right.
That was perfect. Thank you, Stephanie. Brett, would you like to get started on?
Well, yes, but I'm going to tell you right up, but the presentation I was going to give is going to be very, very different than the one I'm going to do now, because the things that you brought up were so spot on, and they shifted the entire way I was looking at the situation. Why am I still that cord? I'm still going to plug it in because it's, I can, and why not? Because it's a party and it's always fun. But first I'm going to start with I should probably wake this up with a little bit of a confession. Hi, my name's Brett. Last time I drove was about an hour ago. Thanks. I know it's kind of an exciting thing to be. I wanted to talk to you about being physically active, But I'm also going to kind of go off of a little bit of a side road here, pun intended, in that my experience has been very, very different in how I got here as well. I used to be an EMT, which is a really great place to be if you don't like to sleep and you want to have weird dreams for the rest of your life. And one of the things that I did is I actually moved into the operating room setting, and I was a trauma tech up there, and up at University Hospital, and I spent a lot of time not only as an EMT scraping people up off the road, but then in the OR trying to put them back together. And I'm going to be a little blunt, and I apologize. So I'll say a few things, and if you just wave at me, I'll back up a little bit. I was doing that when I was probably 23, 24 years old, and I had been on so many crashes. I got a beat into me by a professor like a long time ago. They are crashes. I have been on so many crashes that are very preventable. Whether that prevention was either on the part of the person who was walking, was driving, or was designing the streets. And I want to make sure that that is a big part of what I want to talk about, because I have had many experience of trying to patch people together who do not get patched back together. I've worked many cases where many of my patients did not survive. And it was such a gut punch every time when I know that they were not going home to their family, and that they were not going home because of something that they could have prevented. And so while I want to talk about physical activity, I do also have to be very, very real about safety. And for me, that is probably highlighted in one case in particular. Now, you were saying a really good thing, that people do not estimate speed very well. Have you heard the story that if you're driving down the road and you see a bird fly up, they know about how fast you're driving, and they know when they need to fly up. So if you see, a crow eating some roadkill on the road, there you go. Are you going to move? Are you going to move? Are you going to move? They know. They can read it pretty well. Does it always work? No. Humans suck at it. There was one girl, 16 years old, up in Farmington. She was on the west side of I-15 and wanted to go to Lagoon. She saw I-15. This is 30 years ago. This is a long time ago, where I-15 was a little bit different. There were not the barriers. There were not the fences. There were fewer lanes, to be honest, and the speeds were very much on the slower side. But she thought she could make it. She was going to just meet her friends over at Lagoon, and she ran. And she made it across the southbound. She didn't make it across the northbound. She was hit so hard. It's hard because I've done this for so long, and yet it still hits me. She was hit so hard that not only were her shoes blown off, but her arm was blown off. And it was one of my very first patients I ever lost, because as we were working on her, all I could see was the potential. And then when I'm finishing up and having to reach over and get that arm and put it into the body bag, then all of a sudden it means something to me. Now, I've been doing this for a long time. This is where I've done all my research. This is where I've spent all my time. My dissertation was actually on the perception of the built environment and its effect on physical activity levels. And so when I look at a real world street, every time I see that street, to me, it is possibility, both good and bad. And so I get very excited, and I spend a lot of time promoting physically active communities and where people want to be. Heck, I call it How Walking Can Save America. That's not very, bombastic. Let's go with that. But I do want to just show a couple of things that we've spent time on. And that is, can we change the environment in which people are moving, both for positive things and maybe some not so positive things that we could improve? So environments to me are so very important, but attitudes play as much of a role in it. If you believe that you are safe, you are probably a pretty good representative of what's going on, unless you're a teenager and then you're just clueless, but that's okay. We love them. But it comes down to, do we have the right environments to support physical activity? Do we have the support and the attitudes to make that actually happen? That is where we are working very, very hard. And I spent a lot of time working with UDOT, spent some time working with Salt Lake City and county and all across the state, and have a really good hope for the future on where we are. Now, I'm going to kind of go down a history lane because that's kind of what we do. Our roads are really wide, aren't they? Have we heard the story of why our roads are so wide? You've heard the Plat of Zion, the whole thing, how you should be able to turn a cart and horses, all the way around on Main Street. Yeah, or State Street or wherever we are. That is the truly jealous part of so many places around the country. I'm going to go out on a limb and say, do you know what our width is of our average traffic lane? I know you didn't expect I'd be asking you questions. This is mean.
Travel lane or full curb to curb?
Let's just go travel lane.
Depends on,
I know.
and it does. City, we're trying to get down to like 11 or 12. UDOT, it's going to be more like 15.
Yeah. And I was going to say most of these, if you went to some of the big roads, especially the UDOT roads, the state roads, they're going to be 14 to 15. The NACTO and MUTCD say that you should do it about 12. 12 is the standard. And yet so much of our work is saying, can we get it down to 10? Now, why would we want to take it from 15 to 12 to 10? Because exactly what you were showing up there with that ability to say, how much I see when I'm driving fast. When I'm driving fast, I see you. I'm not seeing all this. And if you all of a sudden have somebody squirt out in front, whether it's a bike, a kid, a deer, whatever it is, you do not see them, physically cannot see them. And so all of the things that we are looking at, if we're able to limit that horizontal spacing, those restrictions that way, you slow down by default. I-15 is designed to be run at 70 miles an hour. That's its design speed, right? It's meant to happen. Whatever it's posted at is a different thing. Why should we still have the same width of roads that are posted at 40 miles an hour that are designed for 70? You can guarantee, I've been a teenager before, and I would never drive fast, but I'm sure others would. The idea is that we design for what we want to achieve. And right now we are working very hard on the promotion of physical activity as a positive thing. And so I'm going to kind of go this way a little bit and talk about why. If you look at the physical activity rates that have been around for a very long time, I squished this one down to 2001 to 2019. The reason I did that is I kind of wanted to cut off COVID because that changed things a little bit. All of a sudden things went very different. But you can take this all the way back to 1980 and you go, oh, look, based on this, you can see that physical activity rates, however we've measured it, have stayed relatively flat. Yes, Utah's doing better than a lot of other places in the United States. But that also means we have a lot of room for improvement, because when I say this is the people who are hitting the recommended amount, it's a little squishy. Let's just be honest. Sometimes people tell a story that is going to make them look good. And we're going to be honest. Sometimes we can measure things and go, you didn't get as much as you thought. But regardless of our promotion, whether it's saying, go to the gym, go for a walk, join a running club, whatever it is, it's not really changed our levels that much. So if you look at the United States as a whole, there are some places that are doing really well. And I would say Utah, Colorado, Washington are doing great. Vermont, I want you to notice, props to Vermont, as long as you stay away from the Mississippi River. Apparently there's something in the water, because they scare me, because there's a whole lot of not very active people. I had a friend of mine who actually wrote a book called Gravy is Not a Food Group. So that was another story. So it had a lot to do with personality, culture, and attitudes are very different when it comes to things, but physical inactivity falls into that as well. This big question, and I ask this question every single day. Okay, great. Who cares? What does this mean? Why do we even want to talk about it? Because if we are going to be talking about pedestrian safety, we're talking about it because people want to be out there or they have to be out there. Either way, if they are being physically active, they're going to have better and improved physical, mental, emotional, societal, all those things that are positive for our health. So I'm kind of flying through here. Is there anybody here who doesn't know that being physically active is a good thing for you? Just no? Okay, I can skip this. All right. In fact, I'm going to jump ahead because I wanted to show you a couple things in particular. Sorry, I'm all over the place. Wow, I'm jumping. Here we are. Utah is one of the very different states when it comes to our physical activity rates. You would probably go out on a limb and say our most active group would be our kids. It seems to fit. Walking to school, playing out on the road, playing whatever you do. Not so much. We actually struggle. Our kids, while we're measured differently on this than I'm showing you, are very much on the inactive level. You get a little bit older. Depending on your situation and who you are and where you are, you get a little bit more active. Only in Utah that I've found are our older adults the most active group. I blame St. George. But I also blame the fact that we've thought about this and that we've actually built cities, towns, roads, sidewalks that are very supportive compared to a lot of our places back east. You know, I hear you with the Vermont. I was in Massachusetts last year and I went, how on earth do you get around this place and not die? So we are really in a good spot. And I want to give major props to Salt Lake City for the work they've done. In fact, nationally, I hear Salt Lake City touted in a lot of our health groups. So I'm going to say this is amazing and I want to keep that going. If you are out for a little bit of activity, whether that purpose is because you want to get some exercise, notice I don't use the E word very often, but exercise, or you're just going somewhere. Whatever it is, walking tends to be the most popular way that people will do it. And so if you want to ride a bike, great. We have support for that. If you want to walk, great. We're trying hard to make that a little bit better. But I want to get into why we're going to talk about certain things the way we are. Surgeon General is a really interesting position. This is actually a position that directs the public health service, also talks about all the things that are going on within health and looks at what's happening and says, can we highlight good things that are happening? Can we highlight some things that are challenging? You may have heard of a Surgeon General's call to action. You may have heard of a Surgeon General's report like on smoking. That was a very common one we've talked about for many years. But a call to action says we want to raise awareness. Let's have this call to action. This feels very much like a voting type world where we say, this is important. Can we start a conversation in a civil way that says, can we make this be something that we can work together to have progress? And so the Surgeon General's call to action on walking and walkable communities is going to be one of those homework assignments for you to go look at, because while it's a riveting read, and I guarantee you will probably be asleep by page 14, it will still, if you're looking at it, will give you some really good ideas, some good things to look at. Now, this is where I want to kind of pause for a minute. The things that we've been talking about today really work. The physical things can make a big difference, whether you're looking at the presence of a bollard as you're driving down the road. You don't want to run into it. Therefore, you kind of slow down, you kind of pull away. You have this shy distance between you and that bollard. You also want to make sure that the speed slow down to be accommodating of that. Those are things that work. But I love that you started with paint. Paint's cheap. Paint can honestly, even in a city as large as ours, can be easy to get put into place. You can turn that around pretty quick. Anybody remember the open streets during COVID? Yeah, this was a really cool thing where he said, you know what, we understand that sometimes people need to get out. They need to get away from being cooped up within their house. We want them to get a little bit of activity. We want to make sure it's safe to do so. And you know what? Nobody's really driving right now. We're kind of in a different world. So roads were shut down throughout Salt Lake City and were actually designated as open streets. Yes, if you were driving, you lived in the area and you need to go through, yeah, you could, absolutely. But it said, be aware there will be people using the entire street. Were they successful, do you think?
Yeah, 8th East actually turned into a permanent project. We did have one zone that we had to cancel because people couldn't get along. But it was neighbors versus neighbors, who could walk and who could drive. It was sort of amazing. But other than that one zone, they were successful, and yeah, at least one permanent project has come out of it.
Sorry, I've got a Crips and Bloods thing going on in 8th East. That's kind of beautiful. But it worked. It worked. In fact, it's been used as a success story around the country because it is not only a thing that it's not unique to just, obviously Utah. It's been done around the country, but this was done so well that we were actually not only able to do that, as you said, turn some of these permanent. I still am hoping for Main Street to stick with us. We're hopeful, but it's been highlighted that not only did we do it, did we make it happen, and minus a few, turf war fair kind of moments, the data supports it. And that's where it really gets nice, is we can say, yes, it works, and here's why. So when we get talking about this, and not only safety, but also encouraging, because I feel like they're both the same thing. Because if you don't feel safe, you're not going to do it. If you do feel safe, you're probably going to do it. I didn't say you definitely are. You probably would be willing to do it. But you also have to look at things like this network connectivity. Can you get there from here? Anybody remember Shel Silverstein, where the sidewalk ends? That's kind of how a lot of sidewalks end up being. We're like, it can get from there to there. And while the sidewalk may end, the person doesn't. And so we find all these little trails and paths. And that's actually where I spent a lot of my time on my research was, can these sidewalk and trails and just general network disconnectivity inhibit physical activity? So we look at, are the sidewalks in good condition? Can you get there from here? Are they actually there? But also maybe we'll kind of go avenues and go, can you get there over the hills and valleys of the avenue sidewalks, which are very exciting. Also, not only is part of how do you get there, but where are you going? Because if you don't have a place to go, it's congratulations, you just went for a loop, and that's exciting, but it doesn't get you motivation. You'll do it once, maybe twice, you won't do it again. But if you're going to the store, you're going down to your work, if you're going down to a park and you're wanting to spend time out there, these are amazing things. So this idea of not only a variety of destinations, but mixed land use. So maybe we have residential mixed in with commercial. Maybe we have some examples where people go to the farmer's market, but along the way, they also do other things on the way back. They find another restaurant, they find a place to hang out, whatever it is. I highlight this idea of these small networks that kind of like your zones, in that you have a place that you frequent, and they become very easy places to get around, and it becomes very familiar. It's almost like you kind of get your own groove into the place, and it becomes seen. And the more people you see out on a road, walking, riding a bike, whatever you're doing, wheeling along, we can say that becomes this a bit of a tipping point to where we say, critical mass is the word we use often to say, you can do that here. And if we can do it here, then all of us can do it. It's not just those people who are very, very confident and have a lot of skill. I'm not going to go through a lot of these things in detail, but I do want to hit this point of prioritizing people. That's hard. A friend of mine works in Nebraska in their public health department, and they do not have what's the right word? They have a department of roads. It has absolutely nothing with transportation. It's about the roads. People, we don't care about them. Trucks, cars, they use the roads. But it's all about the roads there. Here, we're really lucky in that, UDOT's whole tagline is moving people. And so that's kind of a cool way to look at it. And I really feel like, again, I'm not just touting Salt Lake City because she's right here. But it is kind of an amazing thing that there has been a real focus on the actual people who live there. And the reason I say that is the opposition we often get is I don't like it, therefore I'm going to make it hard for everybody. Our default, our prima facie approach has been to say, we're going to make it easier. We used to say making the healthy choice the easy choice. I'm kind of fighting that. I want to call it making the healthy choice the default choice. And therefore you say it is by default, I would prefer to walk from here to there, as opposed to getting into a car and driving. That being said, I have had a neighbor, she moved, but she was 2 houses away. She wanted to come over and ask me a question. She got in her car and drove to me 2 houses away. And I mean me, 1 house, her, not like 2 in between. She was literally right there. And I gave her so much crap. And she says, I didn't even think about it. It was just, I'm so used, I get in the car and I drive wherever I'm going. She says, yeah, I'm going somewhere else afterwards. But I gave her a lot of crap about it because it was just such a funny default example of how we do that. Let's say you wanted to go through downtown Salt Lake City and you were on a road that was, 45, 50 miles an hour. You see something on the side of the road, you see a storefront that goes, ooh, that looks cool. I want to go there. Nope, you're already past it. You're already half a mile down the road now. If you're going down at 10 miles an hour, 20 miles an hour, and you see something in a store window, guess what? It's not that hard to slow down, park, get in. And if you're walking, going 3 miles an hour, you make that turn right in. So when we talk about physical activity and network design as being good, it's not just good for health, it's good for the economy, and it ends up being a real positive thing. So when you prioritize people, you end up prioritizing community. And that means you're prioritizing safety, economics, connectivity, resources, variety of experience, and you make it be something that is powerful and supportive. So I put in here, people drive the economy. I love to use drive in these things. It's just so punny and it makes me happy, not the other way around. And in many cases, we are really good at saying, oh, we can't do that here. Price, because they're not here, had a real problem with parking on street. And they said, we don't want to lose any of our parking. How dare you take away our parking? It's going to destroy my company. My business will fold just because of that one parking space you want to get rid of. Was it squatters or was it Red Rock that put a bike parking spot in front on 3rd South? Sorry, I can't remember. It's squatters. Okay. Squatters did an amazing thing. They got rid of 2 parking spaces. I think it was 2 parking. That's bold on 3rd South. That's really brave because you're like, already we're all knowing it's kind of a challenge to park around there and we want to be very cautious. They got rid of 2 parking spaces and put in bike parking. First of all, also very interesting. I appreciate people on bikes more than in cars if they've been having a little too much, but at the same time, you may want to walk that bike. They were able to get, if I remember right, they said 16 bikes parked in there as it was designed, where you could have had 1 or 2 cars. It's a brilliant way. Price City is fighting it. We're having that conversation literally right now to say, can we get rid of parking at some extent and make it be more accessible? It's happening. It's a slow burn. It's going to take a long time. And it really does come from situations like where you are right now. And I love the fact that you're here because this means that you are not a transportation engineer coming here to say, hey, how can we do this? This is probably very unusual for you. And I love that you're actually thinking about it. I want you to think about a couple of things, just like Mary Catherine. Put this in your mind. When you go out for your walk, when you go out for wherever you're going, and I don't care where you go as long as you get there, think about the supports. It may be something that's Americans with Disabilities Act relevant. Maybe that ramp to get onto the sidewalk is going to make that difference between you being able to do it and you not. Maybe that ability to walk in a sidewalk that's wide enough to not only encourage you to be walking out there, but you feel comfortable. We've got cool sidewalks. We've got really cool sidewalks. Now, that's not the same across the state. We do have some ever so lovely bare minimum requirement 3-foot sidewalks. And I don't know if you've done this, but in fact, do this when you get home or when you're walking with somebody. Measure out 3 feet and try to walk with somebody. And somebody's going to be walking in the grass. Somebody's going to get pushed. Somebody's going to get kind of squished into it. Even if you have a really wide sidewalk and you don't have a policy that prohibits things like sandwich boards in your sidewalk from intruding upon that, all of a sudden you've taken a beautiful 12-foot sidewalk and made it accessible for 3 feet, just like everywhere else. So even if we can get a 4-foot sidewalk, it's progress. I have a great picture I was thinking about bringing with me, but I was in Washington, D.C., and I was walking along the mall and there's this beautiful 3-foot sidewalk. It was this itty bitty little thing. It was kind of rough. And you could see what we call a desire line or a goat path where somebody had said, I'm here. I need to get there. There's no easy way. I'm cutting across the grass. And they'd done it so much. They created a dirt path. Literally, it went like this, and kind of sunk down. They'd walked so many. And rather than put a sidewalk there, they put an 8-inch path of asphalt. Just so they said, we're going to get where we need to be. We are not prioritizing people when we ignore desire lines and go paths. Things that are pedestrian friendly, things that are user friendly, as I'm putting on here, that are clean, friendly, welcoming. We use this term enclosed as a good part of it. You don't want to feel like you're walking across the field, but you also want transparency. You want to see what's happening. So here's a good example. I think it's also 3rd South, right over by the where the power company, not the power company, the phone company, State Street, I think 3rd South.
Station.
Yeah, Yeah, there's a section there where if you walk, it's sidewalk, wall for like 20 feet straight up. You can't see anything. It's very intimidating. You see a lot of people actually shy away from the building as they're walking. And when we've done things like walk audits, it's fun to watch where people walk. So it's these things that are, is it person friendly? If there was a lot of clutter, if there was a lot, I was in New York and I guarantee you that they try. Bless them, they try. Wasn't my favorite thing. It is a very walkable environment, but it also doesn't meet all those things that we have here. And we're very, very fortunate on that. We talked about a lot of these things. So I want to just finish it up with this idea of a concern that we fought a lot. And that is this perception of a loneliness epidemic. I say a perception because it can be squishy in some things, and in certain populations, it's very, very powerful. However, as a societal big picture, if we can get people out within it, there's going to be better relationships, fewer turf wars, maybe, better conversations, more perceived, even those soft touches for social connectivity can be very powerful just by seeing somebody on a walk. So as we're walking along and I see you and I nod at you and maybe I nod at you the next time I see you, we're friends now. We may not go out to, lunch and have soft tacos, but we may actually recognize each other as we walk through. That means I'm now connected to you in some way. Very little, very soft, but you're part of community. And so this social connectivity is a powerful part that we're looking at as a health perspective, not only from just getting people physically moving, but mentally connecting and engaging. So you mentioned the parking paving paradise. I love that one because when we have the stores up front by the sidewalk, as opposed to having to walk across the black hole of a parking lot to get there, we're more likely to get into it. We're also more likely to see more people, and we're going to make a connection between it all. So I'm going to stop there, and because I feel like we should have more time with questions than anything. And I feel like we have a lot of really good things. I also have a book recommendation I did not plan on, but I'm doing it anyway. Jeff Speck's a really good guy. He's been here many a time. And so he's written a book called Walkable City. This one's called Walkable City Rules. And literally, I love the way he phrased it. He said, this is a very arbitrary number, 101 rules to having a walkable city. He says it could be half that, it could be twice that. But I love that even if you open up one thing and you go, challenge the level of service. Wow, that was a bold one. Level of service says how many vehicles can we get through an intersection at any point of time, and it will change and it will be graded on a scale of A to F, I think. So everywhere. And it often says, how fast are you getting through there? If your vehicle level of service goes up, your pedestrian level of service goes down. I think it's more of a balance. So if you're bored and you need some light reading, it's actually very easy because these tend to be about 2 pages worth on each topic. If you are looking for something to focus on, maybe something to engage with your local city, this is probably a really clean place to start. And I'll leave it at that. So I'm going to stop there and hand it back to you, Mary Catherine, because I know you probably have a million questions for us.
I just have a little anecdote about from your last point about getting out in your neighborhood. So we live on Ramona, a couple blocks away from here. And when we moved in, didn't really know our neighbors that well. We sort of kept to ourselves. We did our thing. I got pregnant and it was hot in Utah, and I would do my pregnant lady waddles in the summer around our neighborhood. So I explored a lot more than I ever had. And I walked by a house and this guy was out just doing the yard work, playing with his dog, and I did a double take. And I was like, excuse me, this is a very weird question, but did you used to work at the store in Vermont? And he's like, why, yes, I did. So he and his wife, who I'd worked with at a shop in Vermont over a decade ago, we split ways. I had no idea we hadn't talked in a decade. We weren't super close, but they live like 3 blocks from us. We have kids the same age, and we now talk to each other all the time. It's part of my our parent group, and I would have never found them if I hadn't walked by their house. So yeah, you're connected. You should walk, everyone.
I mean, it's always fun for me when I get to see, who is out there, who's moving, who's being familiar. I see familiar faces here, which is nice. I always love that. So it's always a treat for me to see that. And I realize that the serendipity of what we have in a community means that we really are a people-focused environment. Humans are social, and I love that. Even if I'm not always the most social person, I love that we as humans can be social creatures. And I think that supports, it encourages, and makes how we actually do things a lot better. So, yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you both so much. I'm going to ask one question. And then if you are online, you can go ahead and enter any questions that you have into the chat now, and then we're going to open it up to the people that are here in person to also ask questions. But a lot of really awesome conversation around like community and recommendations for things that we can do, like with reading and like participating in a walk audit. A lot of the entities that has been talked about today too, like UDOT, DHHS, Salt Lake City, we have like public safety, public works, like all of these really big organizations coming together. And it can be a little hard as like individuals to figure out exactly where to fit in when there's all of these really big, powerful organizations that are already like doing the work. So like if we do a walk audit, if we notice something, like what are some things that we like if we do a walk audit, like where can we turn it into? How can we bring this up with like local officials, things like that? What are like very specific action things that we can do like as people of the league?
First of all, I want to talk about the walk audit. We've mentioned going for a walk in your neighborhood and how amazing that can be. There are formalized ways of doing this where you actually have specific questions that can be asked, but it all comes down to what are your goals. I love doing walk audits. I think they're amazing. They're kind of a really clean way to engage a population differently. So for instance, if you're concerned about how it is to walk around your city, grab some people, go on a walk. Maybe you don't want it to be formal, and you ask the question, do you feel like you're in a spot where this is a good spot? And I often will ask, how do you feel? Is this a very walkable spot? Thumbs up, thumbs down, I get this. Then we walk to the next spot. Is this better or worse? I get thumbs up, thumbs down, whatever it is. It's fun because we get this feedback really quick. But my favorite ones have been when we bring in people you wouldn't expect. I love doing it with schools. And when we do it, we get the principal, we get the public works, or someone from the police department to come walk with us. We get a parent, and then we get a kid to walk with us, because what we thought was going to be so fun and so easy, they're like, that is an evil dog and it is going to take me down. And I'm scared of that dog. Where the rest of us like, there's a dog. Perceptions and values for each group are going to be so powerful. So the reason I'm talking about that is a walk audit. How do you turn in something that's so informal? Unless we had a standardized form that would kind of give us apples to apples, it's hard. So maybe the walk audit itself, maybe the real treasure was the friends we made along the way. No, that sounds horrible, but maybe it really is. And it's the experience that could be very valuable. That being said, rather than turning it in, how about you bring them with?
Yeah, sometimes when I give talks, I want to bring a box of Depends and just start pointing to it. Because a lot of I think the specifics of what you would do with a walk audit are going to depend. We, with a lot of our projects, the city does formal walk audits as sort of a kickoff. And so sometimes we invite community members, and that is a part where you can participate in a formal walk audit that is part of a project that is happening. It's also really interesting because we get people from other agencies that are not used to working with pedestrian, bicyclists, active transportation, bus users, wheelchairs, but they are transportation professionals. And so we get a lot of value out of just having people actually walk on the streets that they're going to build. We've done some, especially walk with disabilities, and so have people in wheelchairs and blindfolds, and it's really eye-opening. If you're what you do with it might depend on why you're doing a walk audit. Are you just like, this is my neighborhood, I feel like it can be better, I want to document everything? Are you doing it because you know that there's already a project happening? And so I think there are different, the less formal that it is, the more it's sort of leaning towards the friends you made in the experience. If it's something where the transportation, like you've gotten notice that we're doing a project or that planning a development is going up, then I think there may be some avenues where providing that information through to the project manager for that specific project, if it's relevant to that, could be useful. But there's never going to be sort of one place. It also, and I don't want to, it depends on who manages the road as well. And I don't know if you want to get into that.
Follow-up question.
Yeah.
So if we notice that there's an area in like our neighborhood, or an area that we like go in a lot, and we notice that like there's just general feelings of like uneasiness, like I know I don't feel safe, like I know that there's people that maybe run a lot of traffic stops, or like the speed is just too high, and you want to bring it to like a city council meeting or something like that, is a walk audit a way to have, like, if just one person goes and does it and brings in a walk audit, like, is that enough to like start the conversation around kind of like looking at that area in a different way, or like maybe reprioritizing?
Yeah, if it's especially if it's just something where you're like, I notice that this is unsafe and I want to start that conversation. I will plug SLC Mobile, or SLC, like we have a way that you can basically send any feedback about anything to the city, and it does get filtered through to the appropriate group. So if you have like a transportation, you're like issue, even just like putting in a request, I think it's called a request, or a comment, like it will get filtered through, and we do read all of those and will comment. Having a walk audit can, I think, maybe help with that, depending on what the issue is and what the probable fix is. It definitely doesn't hurt, but it is going to be very context dependent on sort of, is it a signal issue? Is it speeding? Is it a sidewalk issue? We just did we did pothole palooza, so we hopefully filled the potholes on your street last week. So
Worst party ever. I'm just saying.
Not if you're into maintenance. So yeah, again, it's not a great answer, and I'm happy to. You have my email if you want to. You can pepper me if you're with questions later, or I've done the walk audit. What do I do with it? And I may have a better answer for you with a more specific situation. But I don't think it hurts anything. But I don't know how immediately actionable they're necessarily going to be. So yeah.
Wonderful, thank you. Do we have any questions here?
Hi, Linda Sage with the League. I have a question for both of you. I was gonna ask you first, but I think I'll ask Dr. McIff, because I'm choking.
Oh no, let's go with the doctor.
So us walking in bad air, any idea on that? I mean, we only have a little bit of time, but yeah, I would like some information on that.
I'm so glad you did that. It's in an interesting little world, because you think the most logical thing is you want somebody to be active, you get them out there and they ride a bike or they walk. Where do they walk or bike? Right next to a road where you have a tailpipe right there. Yes, it is going to have an impact on lung health, as well as you're probably noticing right now. Different thing. You are going to be exposed to higher amounts of the particulate, like the PM 2.5s and the others. And you're also not only going to be because of proximity, but because of increased respiration rate. So you're actually taking in more volume of air. You're getting a lot more. Yeah, it's a problem. It is a real problem. So that's why a lot of our effort has been the above the curb trails. Even if you get someone 10 feet away from that, the difference between being right next to it and just far enough away. What do we always hear in environmental epidemiology? The secret to pollution is dilution, or the solution to pollution is dilution. Same idea. The idea is if you want to have better air quality, get away from the source. That being said, it's hard. And so a lot of the effort that's happening, at least on the statewide level with Utah Trail Network, is to emphasize paved, separated paths to make sure that's a little bit easier. So a couple times ways you can fix it. If you can, don't maybe do it during rush hour. You know, maybe we can find an alternate route. I don't know, boulevard or a pedestrian byway. That might be an amazing thing. That would probably be one of the smartest things, because at a certain point, you're not going to have any difference than anybody else who's just sitting out on their porch, right? But the closer you get to traffic problem. So adjust time, adjust distance, adjust those things, and it can make a difference. I'm glad you asked that, because that is a really big issue. And in this state where we have some of our worst air quality in the nation, that is something we're worried about.
Well, even just stepping up and 10 or
Yeah.
20 feet above it, that's great information. I didn't
Yeah.
even think of that. And Ms. Sotkin, with your what can we do? That is great. I wonder, it looks like you're being very proactive. I wondered how much of that is reactive. If something happens, you go and we have to focus on this before we do other areas.
Yeah, that's a
you.
great question. And I guess we're trying to lean on the proactive, but we do definitely do some reactive, especially with crashes. In particular, we have definitely more deaths and serious injuries than we would like, but we don't have enough that there's a super strong pattern that they're all happening at these 3 intersections. They're all sort of scattered across the city. And so particularly with the Vision Zero planning that we're doing, one of the things that we're looking at is sort of called like the safe systems approach, and just trying to look at places where if a crash would happen, it would be worse. So places where the cars are going faster, places, wider roads where the crossings. And so trying to systematically change things before the crashes happen. We do sometimes go in reactively, and not that they're bad projects, but statistically the likelihood of something happening at that exact same location is very low. So, but a safety project is a safety project. And so, but yeah, we do right now, we're really focused on, we're doing along with the 20 is plenty. We're doing a lot of speed limit reduction signs, projects. I don't know if anyone's noticed, but if you just change the sign, the road characteristics stay the same. And so people generally still drive as fast. And so we're trying to, signs are cheaper and easier. And then going back through and doing different treatments to make the design of the road so you drive slower as well. And so trying to be as proactive as we can.
We have 3 questions online.
So coming from online, how do we get skateboard users, bicyclists, and scooters to coexist on sidewalks with pedestrians?
That's a great question. And one that I don't know if anyone has the best answer. A lot of it is in high network corridors trying to provide, especially for bicyclists and scooters, separated facilities. And so that's where like with the 9-line trail, there is a sidewalk separated from the bike path, and doing that where we can, that takes up more real estate. And so that's expensive. It's time consuming. It's a big construction project. So yeah, not a great answer. We're trying, we know it's a problem. Scooters particularly, we do work with the scooter companies. And so we're trying to help provide things like scooter parking. We do encourage the scooters to ride in the bike lanes. But they're in a bike lane and everywhere, like State Street. We had a lot of scooter riders downtown. So depending on where you're trying to go, the sidewalk is going to be the safest place. So we're working on trying to do speed limiting for the scooters downtown. So they're at least not going as fast. Same with bicyclists. They're technically not supposed to ride on the sidewalk. There is a no riding zone. But again, there are a lot of the zone, there are not safe options. Again, State Street. So we're trying. And I don't know if we'll ever get there, but we're trying.
I have,
I don't want to touch that one with a 10-foot pole. I don't have an answer for it yet.
I have three questions. One was from an online person. And that is, some community councils are saying there's too much traffic calming. Do you want to address that? Whether there's any study of, once it's in, is it?
Yeah, and that's interesting. The Livable Streets program, it's a new program, and we have a lot of passionate people on both sides, and I think we're learning as we go, unfortunately. And so I don't know if there's a way to study what too much would be. We're trying to not put speed bumps everywhere, because I think that's the big one that and speed bumps aren't always the answer. But I think for every area that we go into do traffic calming, we have people that are just like, give us all the speed bumps, and then the people that don't want them. And so trying to look at the area, and that's sort of why we've have the zones. And so trying to look at neighborhoods as a whole and people move through. But yeah, it's a program that we're learning as we're going. We're trying to do a lot of engagement and solve problems that residents bring to us. And that's sort of going back to you are your own transportation experts. And so we have people that'll ask us for a specific thing or not a specific thing. The most helpful feedback that we can get is what are the problems? In this sort of a little bit of tangent, but what problems do you see in your neighborhood? Do you see people speeding? Is it illegal parking? And we get a lot of complaints about delivery drivers, how to manage that. And so really trying to understand what problems the neighborhoods and the zones are seeing. And then we do our best as transportation professionals to apply treatments to solve those problems.
Thank you. I have two related questions. The league likes to advocate about issues once we've learned about them. Are there some things we should be planning to advocate about? And related to that, perhaps, tell us a little bit about what SB 195 was, because it wasn't something that we were focused on in our legislative advocacy. And I knew tangentially regulations about city streets and so on, but I don't know the details.
Yeah, so it's a fun one. It got slid in right at the last week. We were caught off guard a little bit as well. So essentially what came out of it is, and I'll see if I can get all of the language close enough. We have to put basically there's a moratorium on projects that impede traffic. There's an area in the city, the west side is excluded, basically. I think it's like I-15 to the avenues and south. And so we have to provide a study, and then UDOT has to approve the study for any projects. I can't remember the terms. They made up some terms in the bill. So essentially we have to sort of pause anything that hasn't been advertised. We have to put a pause on and put a study together, have UDOT look at the study, and then essentially approve or not approve. So it's taking away sort of our local control of our streets. So we're trying to take it as an opportunity to highlight the work that we're doing, and the safety, and the way that the bill is worded is a lot about adding delay, so making trips take longer. A lot of the work that we're doing, it feels like they're taking longer, but in the city, the signals are essentially doing as much delay as our projects. And so we're hoping we're hopeful that it's just going to be a way that we can highlight our work and have UDOT give their stamp of approval, but we don't know yet.
So advocacy in the future, are there things that are going to be coming before the county or the city, the legislature, or just elsewhere that we should be looking to be advocates?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see next year what I'm sure there'll be a different iteration of the bill. Like I said, usually on the state front, things are pretty quiet for us. I would say for transportation stuff, particular, WFRC's website has a really good tracker. And so they keep track of all their bills that are going through and where they're at, when the committee meetings are. And then another advocacy group that that pushes us, that pokes us, they're the originators of the 20 is Plenty, is a group called Sweet Streets. And so I don't deal with a lot of legislative stuff, so I don't know what's on deck for next year on that level, but those are two great organizations that focus on transportation specific bills. WRC obviously has other ones. It is right now, it's our budget season at the city government level. And so this is a great time that if, pedestrian safety is something that you're passionate about, reaching out to your council person and letting them know that you support pedestrian safety projects, whether it's the Livable Streets, Vision Zero. But this is the time where we see how much money we get for all of the projects. So, and then at sort of a smaller level, we got a lot of projects going on. So if you are interested in livable streets, I'd suggest if you just Google Salt Lake City livable streets, it'll bring you to the website. There's a survey that's always open. And so you can always just add in any information and it'll give you information about what zones are upcoming. So sort of different levels of advocacy.
Thank you.
We survived. Right now, I think that's often where we are on legislative work. But I will say that while I can't say there's necessarily anything specific to look at, I would say that, again, just all politics are local, right? Stay as connected as you can, either with the people who are concerned about, whatever limits are being placed, because again, maybe the most important question is why are they concerned about traffic calming? And get to the heart of that, but work with the local health departments. Local health departments are actually in a really good spot to be able to do things like the walk audits, to work closely with the transportation and land use planners. It's probably best to look at it that way because I feel like we'll get more traction than we would at a state one, unless we're surprised again by another 195.
Yeah, we didn't see it coming.
Thank you.
Okay, so thank you to their speakers, our members and guests for attending in person and online. Everyone who found tonight's event useful, please take a few minutes to share a related post on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Linda, would you like to take over the next parts? I know that we're like very, very close on time.
But let's thank our speakers here. There's just some announcements for the league. You guys don't have to stay for this if you don't want, or you're okay. So these are very brief. Next week, there's a number of activities going on. The Night Owls meet the fourth Monday of each month. And so that's next April 21st. The Nightingales meet the fourth Tuesday of the month, which is next Tuesday, April 22nd. The Town Club will meet the first Thursday of the month, which is May 1st. But before we get to Town Club, we have our state community luncheon Thursday, April 24th, about book banning in Utah. And that's a ticketed event. You have to, sign up and have a ticket, but hopefully, and it's for the entire community, not just for members. So hopefully we'll see many people there. And then finally, our next meeting will be May 21st. It will be an exclusively Zoom meeting, and it will be a time to plan our program for next year. And program includes obviously these general meetings, things that might be studied or advocated about, either separate from the general meetings because we already know what positions we want to take and advocate about, or we'll have learned something during our general meetings. So we're hoping everyone will show up on May 21st to help us plan our program for next year. Thank you very much. And I'm going to end the